right, look. I understand that I took a little bit longer for this than I should have, okay? It's been a long time since the last Lindsay Nikole video, and I'm so sorry, okay? We were supposed to shoot it last week, and I got taken out, okay? I was down for the count, but we're here now.
The last time we were gonna shoot these videos, these gummy snacks were new. These shits is mad old, son. We should have been up here just getting hard.
Eating it?
I don't know if it's eating or fighting with. I'm tussling.
Are you winning?
Nigga, I don't even know.
I'm really excited about this though. This is the Devonian period. I have no idea what the Devonian period. What was the last one that we did? It's been so long. Oh, the last one was the Silurian. Okay, let's see. Yeah. What did I write down for Silurian? Hold on. I got this. Fish explosion.
Nice.
That's what I have here. Fish explosion. Oh, jaw. This is okay. So the last one was when jaws evolved, because before they were jawless. They were just. Well, no, not like that, right? Because they didn't have
the
jaws.
large lobster thing.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I'm excited. I want to see what animals we get next.
We're like what, 300 million years ago now?
Yes.
All right, let's do it.
I'm super stoked. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys are staying safe and sanitized. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started.
I heard your complaints about the pictures being too small.
God
So
damn.
I got a bigger picture frame. It's a little bit bigger than I expected, but I also moved. So I'm gonna give the updates at the end of this video because now is not the time, because today is the Devonian period.
Heck
About
yeah.
400 million years ago, life on this planet was
400,
getting
okay.
bigger than it ever had before. This was the Devonian period, which lasted from 419 to 359 million years ago. Plants were getting upgrades that would shoot them into the sky. Predatory animals were getting to sizes that would send chills down your spine today. Vertebrates were conquering the no-bone zone. The ocean is boring and I want to try something new.
Yeah.
Read my lips, it's a no-bone zone! And of course, like every period we've covered so far, there were also some animals that were just weird as fuck. I'm gonna introduce you to a little sample plate of all of this.
It's like a charcuterie board of animals that you don't eat. They're not good for you, I don't think.
I mean, that you can't eat. They're just rocks now.
And tell you the disrespectful way this period came to an end. My name is Lindsay Nikole.
Hi.
And this is the history of life on Earth that we know of.
Like it's on your shirt.
Yeah.
As always,
Right, that's right. The last one had plants. That was the other big advancement, was some plant life. And the guy was talking about how it's like not that many advanced plants, some pretty basic plants. Yeah.
As always, we're gonna get the global conditions out of the way. This is gonna look fucking sick now. During this time, supercontinent Gondwana was finally headed north, away from the South Pole and ready to see other parts of the world, taking a nice little loop, like the Royal Caribbean Ultimate World Cruise. And finally, Gondwana had a buddy, another supercontinent right near the equator called Euramerica, which was formed by parts of, you guessed it, Europe and America, and also Greenland and Russia. Plate tectonics, as always, going absolutely nuts. Now that land plants are kind of doing their thing, I feel like it makes a lot more sense for me to introduce what the fuck they got going on at the beginning of the video to kind of set the scene. Probably should have been doing that the whole time, to be honest. Makes more sense for the flow of the video, but what are you gonna do? Okay, so in the Silurian, we had those vascular plants that were starting to evolve that Joey talked about, Ixonia and whatnot, the shag carpeting on the riverbanks. And then, of course, the massive fungal towers that Earth called home, like Prototaxites. Well, during the Devonian, the plants started to spread out beyond the wetlands, and Prototaxites got booted. They got replaced with the next major development in terrestrial plant life, the first large trees and forests. Yes, shit was kicking. This is the time plants started to get more comfortable with more rigid support structures that we know today as wood, which was great for early land animals who had found home in the fungus. Luckily, bitches love wood.
That's what she said.
You might be thinking, Lindsay, you said these were the first large trees and forests, but really, how big were they? They couldn't have possibly been that large so soon
they were
after
massive.
the
They
first
were probably
development of wood.
huge.
Well, I like where your head's at, and I can almost guarantee that there were lots of, if not mostly, pipsqueak trees. But the two that I know about, the more well-known trees of the time, were actually fucking massive.
Okay.
How do I pronounce that? Wadiza. The first one is called Wadiza. It is known as the world's first tree that we know of. It got to about 30 feet tall and kind of looks like a palm. And the next one, Archaeopteryx, not to be confused with Archaeopteryx, the transitional dinosaur bird.
Right.
I know they sound fucking identical. Archaeopteryx
Archaeopteryx
was one of the first true trees with that classic woody trunk. And they could get to like 80 feet high, that we know, which is fucking insane. Both of these trees use spores to reproduce instead of seeds, because seeds were not a thing yet. Spores are what algae, fungus, and ferns use to reproduce today. It's kind of like the OG reproduction method of fungus and plants. Seeds do seem to have evolved during this time, though, with the first gymnosperms. Let me make sure I pronounce that right, because I always get plant shit wrong. Gymnosperms.
You did it. You nailed it. Yeah.
That's all the plant stuff I have for you right now.
Okay.
We just watched a really interesting video all about seeds and explosions. And that was posted probably 3 days or 4 days before this video. By the Zafrank vids.
Yes.
Very, very fascinating advancements in plant life.
Such a crazy thing to evolve.
Oh, man.
Like, they had to learn to do that shit,
and
bro.
They nailed it. I mean, that's like some of the most perfect, like, complicated evolutions to stay relevant.
Works.
Yeah.
If you have any questions about other plants or wood, don't ask me. I need an in-house botanist, because I am out of my comfort zone talking about plants.
Okay.
I am hanging on by a thread. So, let's move on to something I'm more comfortable with, the animals. You might have seen this fish in a variety of meme formats. We've arrived at this time in Earth's history. This is Tiktaalik, considered the true transitional considered the first true transitional fossil between fish and water, and tetrapods on land that would eventually evolve into amphibians, reptiles, birds, fish. Not fish. Why did I write that? Why did I write that? That's ridiculous.
I was so shocked.
Yes. That's the list. The Devonian land was finally getting its vertebrates. It was the end of the no-bone zone.
Do not compare my exoskeleton with your falcon.
Before I get ahead of myself, let me get some general information out of the way. Again, I want to define tetrapod. Tetra, 4, pod, legs. All the vertebrates on land have 4 legs, or legs, or at least had. If you remember in the last episode, I talked about the development of ray-finned fish and lobe-finned fish. The lobe fins holding those prerequisites that their tetrapod descendants would use to haul themselves onto land. The common ancestor of both the rays and the lobes had these things called air bladders connected to their throat that we now know in fish today to be the swim bladder. Helps with buoyancy control. The ancestors of tetrapods went a different route, though. Their air bladders evolved into lungs. It might be weird to try to imagine what this would look like in a fish. A fish with lungs in a fish. But luckily, we have a living fossil example of what this looks like. Lungs in a fish. One of the tetrapod lineage's closest living relatives.
Hello.
You guessed it, lungfish, which have gills but also have lungs to breathe air, which they absolutely need to survive. They can live in dried up patches of mud and haul themselves onto land to get to a different piece of mud if they need to. And they go about it in a pretty grotesque way.
I was going to say, they just flop in.
Probably started moving onto land in a similar fashion about 390 million years ago, that we know of. And with more and more time spent from shallow water onto land, came more and more adaptations to be comfortable there. At first, their skulls became flatter, with their eyes situated on the top of their head to spot food and foe from above the water line in their shallow environments. They also got...
I would just be so sad if I was just like that guy in the first transitional where like they're not quite on the side, they're not quite on the top, they're just kind of in the middle somewhere. And I just really can't see shit. I'm like I have to tilt my head in weird angles to really get a good view.
I mean, couldn't see shit then, can't see shit now.
Right, like,
is it any different for you?
Bro, I'm just, the difference at 100 Like, bitch, what? Now say it to my fucking other eye. Playing with me, motherfucker.
Oh my god.
I got my eyes on you and on the ceiling.
They also got a neck, or range of motion. And of course, over time, their limbs became stronger and stronger to let them move around land with ease, since clearly getting around like a lungfish is not the ideal terrestrial form. The coolest part about this transition is all of the transitional fossils that scientists have found that literally show a gradient of characteristics from water to land. Tiktaalik is the most famous of those because it was kind of the missing link for a long time. And the story of its discovery is absolutely insane. So I actually decided I'm going to make it a separate video that I'm going to put out next week because it honestly deserves its own spotlight. I remember learning about this discovery in college and having one of those moments of like, holy fuck, science is so cool. One of the discoverers of Tiktaalik, Neil Shubin, has a couple of videos on YouTube where he was either interviewed or giving a presentation just talking about the discovery, and he is so just clearly passionate about it, and it's so cool to watch. So I'll link one in the description if you want to hear about the discovery from the first person point of view before I present it next week in the third person point of view.
Right.
Over the years that I've been on TikTok,
dope.
I've gotten tagged in a disturbing amount of anti-evolution videos that are trying to discredit this transition. Like,
Right.
yes,
That makes
TikTok
sense.
is filled with garbage. But the sad thing is they're getting all of their information from these sources that they think are credible, that I've never heard of because I'm not on the anti-science side of the internet.
Yeah.
But they
Right.
have sources for them. And that's true with anything, any topic, just with how search engine algorithms work, kind of
Yeah.
keeps people in their own bubble regardless of if it's true or not.
And also, like currently especially, Google is so useless
It
at
sucks.
trying to filter through what are actual sources and what are not actual sources.
The way web crawlers work is also why like Twitter got rid of the likes page, right? Because everybody gave access to Google and just let it crawl through all of their data.
Yeah.
But that doesn't source things properly. It's
Nope.
up to the user to be able to define what a good source is or isn't.
Yep.
What is credible. And a lot of you guys were not taught to do that.
Absolutely not.
And I've been talking to her so passionately for months now about I will see an article written.
Yep.
And I was like, hey, the original context for this is a tweet some guy just made
Yep.
guessing. And now we're getting articles written and other tweets and videos and TikToks made
And-
with no source available.
Their source is the tweet that they read.
And who wrote it? Just a guy just spreading misinformation.
Like people will say, "Oh, well, I read," but like you didn't read it, right? You scrolled past it.
That's also true.
That's not.
It's also true.
It's not how that works.
And also, reading someone else's summary is not reading it.
right.
And I think a lot of people are getting caught in that where somebody else tells them and they go, well, I think that person is credible, thus the information they're giving is credible, which is not how it works. You can listen and live life that way, but don't make an argument confidently based on that information.
Absolutely.
Just say somebody said once, it might be true, it might not.
right.
Scary. That's why I started using Ground News. It's a website and app created by a former NASA engineer with a mission to help you read the news in a more objective, data-driven
Oh,
way. You can
really?
check out
Oh, I like
headlines
that,
from over
actually.
50,000
Okay.
news sources from across the political spectrum and get a
Ground
quick
News,
visual
huh?
breakdown of each story's political bias, factuality, and who owns the
Okay.
source. It's all backed by ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organizations, so it is serious and organized stuff. Let me show
Serious.
you how it works using this story on lizard smugglers.
I'm
that
interested.
got
Hold on, let me see real
in
quick.
Australia. Hell yeah. So you can see all the coverage details in the upper right corner, covered by over 50 sources, and more than half the sources covering it are politically centered. And then if you go
Okay.
further down to the bias distribution, you can see a visual of the sources that covered it and where they fall on the political spectrum.
Okay, very interesting. So
Yeah.
that's really easy. And I definitely support sourcing things from multiple places anyways.
Right.
This works.
Now onto the animals that no one on either side really has any smack to talk about. So I actually
All
don't
right.
have much to say about the arthropods that made it to
Look how
land
cool.
in the
Looks like a
last period,
dinosaur.
which
Yeah.
is shocking
Or Pokemon.
because in the next period they are fucking taking flight and they are massive and it is
Disgusting.
complex and huge and massive. So it's thought that flight in insects and also
Huge,
insects in
massive.
general must have evolved during the Devonian or even earlier. But trying to find evidence of that is like trying to find the tiniest needle in the largest haystack in the
Right.
world. They may be the most successful lineage today, but they are very small and weak as shit. There was at one time a
Weak as
fossil that was
shit.
thought to be the oldest fossil insect called Rhynionatha, discovered in 1919 as a little tiny partial head with preserved mouth parts. Found in rocks about 400 million years old. It seemed to be
Okay.
an insect based on those mouth parts, and later specimens found from the same site had even more of their body preserved, and they
Right.
seemed to be some sort of wingless insect.
I can also identify things by their mouth parts. Sorry,
This is an
I know,
educational
I
video.
know, and I backed it up. You can
You
cut
didn't
it
have
out.
to do that.
It just fits so
Did
well.
it though?
Well, that's what their job is, and I feel like I should sign up for that. I'm good at it. I can do it with my eyes closed, even. Try me,
Play the video.
please. Okay.
Such as today's springtail looking thing. And so
That's
for a long
cute,
time,
yeah.
this was considered the earliest insect ever found. But then, over 100 years after its discovery in 2017, the specimens were reanalyzed to be some sort of myriapod, the group that included centipedes and millipedes.
Wow.
And we already knew they were bopping around, so now we
Right.
got nothing that I know of. For now, this
Oh,
is just to
okay.
say, prepare yourself for the massive leap that is coming in the next period. In summer,
Got it.
there were millipedes, and then money, for millions of years. And then,
Yeah.
boom, 3-foot-long dragonflies. Next. Moving on to
All
the
right.
trilobites.
Trilobites!
They still kick it.
One of my
That's all there
favorites.
is to that. But I promise the rest of this period was not so mellow. Like I said, there were still some specimens that were weird as fuck. There's always strange specimens for a variety of reasons. Maybe they look like aliens. Maybe they're bigger than you're comfortable with. Maybe they're just simply heinous. Luckily, the strange specimens on today's lineup hit all of these. And to really build the suspense, we're gonna get bigger and bigger as the video goes on. So, starting off with the smallest on our list, how do I pronounce this? Mimetoster. Let's just go with that. Couldn't find anything, so let's just go with that. Allow me to introduce you to Mimetoster,
That
which
is
kind of looks
cool.
like some sort.
What?
That is cool.
Look how spiny he is.
I'm gonna go with Mimi Taster.
I'm going with Mime Taster.
Nice. I'm gonna say it's the I and the E have the same sound.
I like
Mimi.
that. I like breaking it just into just two words.
Yeah.
Mime Taster.
Right.
Sort of crab spider on a bad acid trip.
That's
This
better.
was, you guessed it, an arthropod that can get to about 5 to 6 centimeters long. So, just a little guy. But
Yeah, he's
heinous
small.
nonetheless. Remember from the Cambrian episode, there was an
I
arthropod
do.
that kind of looked like this?
I very
Well,
much do.
well, they're actually considered to be related to each other. You can probably think of Mimetoster as like Morella's Wario, but they had a lot more going on than that. Since they were first described in 1931, Mimetoster's fossils have almost always been found in association with either a sponge or
weird.
little cone cephalopods. They also seem to
Okay.
have lived in
That's
little
really
groups.
weird.
They were very social. Very popular. They valued friendship and helping thy neighbor. It seems as though sponges used them as a hard substrate to settle on. And the little cephalopods, I don't know, maybe they were just hanging out. So, even though Mimetoster looks like
funny.
sudden death visuals, they seem to have been pretty chill little guys.
I like
The
them.
next little guy on our lineup got to about 10 centimeters long, so still teeny weeny. It's called Schinderhans. I think that's how you pronounce it. Long, so still teeny weeny.
My
It's
boy
called
Schinderhans.
Shinder. That's like a little bro right there.
Schinderhans.
He's like a arthropod shrimp, like a little shrimp tail.
Look at his
The little, yeah, he's got little fins,
I
a big ass
love it.
black eye. What a weird looking
I love
bro.
him. He looks like a little shrimp.
Little segmented body in there too.
Yeah.
How do you
Schinderhans.
even? He probably just.
Right. Right.
That's how you pronounce it. Another
It looks
arthropod
like it.
that was named after the 18th century German
Oh my
bandit.
God.
Because, yeah, I can definitely see the resemblance here. Right off the bat, I'm sure you're thinking it looks right out of the Cambrian, even more so than the last one. What is it
Yeah,
about
yeah.
them that makes them look like a Cambrian creature? In the paper that announced its discovery, scientists mention it's the prominent limb or claw at the front of their head that makes
Right.
them look like a Cambrian creature.
That's
They call the great
badass.
appendage.
That's what she said.
I can already smell the
Nice.
comments coming about this one. A lot of Cambrian arthropods had the great appendage, like Ovidinia and Homolocaris, etc. And then boom, here's another one from 100 million years after that. At the time of
Yeah.
its discovery in like 2009, this was a really big deal. It was thought the great appendage forms went extinct at the end of the Cambrian. It's still a
Right.
big deal, but since then, Neorethiran was found, discovered from the Ordovician, so there's just a better understanding now that the great appendage did not disappear, as
Right.
some had thought and lived longer
That's
than
awesome.
we could have ever imagined. All right, we're gonna jump up quite a bit from 10 centimeters to 6 feet.
I mean,
6 feet.
elephants, right? They have a great appendage.
Right.
Yeah.
A trunk.
Yeah. And anteaters also.
Anteaters and toucans. Toucans have a great appendage. Yeah.
I don't know.
Long beak.
Yes. You know what? Yes. I'm saying yes.
I know that's a bit jarring. Another arthropod in a heinous form we're already familiar with. The
I'm so
Pedorhaemus,
sorry.
a sea
6
scorpion that was
feet.
found in oceans that are now North America, the Czech Republic, and possibly Australia. Australia is unconfirmed for now, but it would fit right into the bill.
Ah!
Pedorhaemus
Oh my
was one of
God.
the major predators of its time, with massive claws to rip their prey to shreds. Early
God
overestimated
damn.
calculations placed them as the largest sea scorpion to ever exist,
Hmm.
until 2007, when a fossil claw of one of their relatives left them in the dust. Finally,
Damn.
we've arrived at the sea scorpion I've been waiting to talk about for 6 months.
Okay.
Time has come.
Dunkleosteus, the largest sea scorpion to ever
Dunkleosteus!
exist that we know of. Based on body size calculations from that 2007 claw, they could get to 8 to 9 feet long, dude.
That's
the length
nuts.
of 36 average scorpions today in a single file line. We don't have shit like Dunkleosteus nowadays.
No,
so just how big was
thank
this
God.
claw that changed everything? The preserved length was about
Oh, I bet you they would be delicious. You think they can cook them up? You think they got any, like, what is that? That word for the meat that's, like, kind of hard? You know? Yeah.
I can't think
Like a
of it.
lobster claw.
Right.
Like, what's that meat called?
It's just meat.
Well, if he had lobster claws, I would love to breed some in a big vat of something.
No, they would not be tasty.
I bet you they're delicious.
No way.
14 inches, just over a foot long. But it gotten kind of chipped over the millions of years that it spent in the rock, so we're missing about a quarter of its length. So in life, it would have been 18 inches long.
That's what he said, right, guys?
And then scientists used to cross-multiply shit that we've talked about before to figure out a good estimate of their total size. Knowing their proportions to their confirmed relatives and whatnot. What?
Or they just had a big ass claw.
Yeah.
And a little body.
Right. Just dragging a giant claw. And the claw was buoyant so like it could float with it. And it just walked around just like this. Just like just trying to claw stuff. Yep.
That would be so funny. I understand that that's just not how that works. But we don't know.
You wasn't there.
We don't know.
There's at least a not 0% chance.
Maybe that specific Jacolopterus
that
was
one
just fucked up.
Exactly they got so big is not totally understood. And before you say oxygen.
Stop! You violated the law.
I must stop you right there. That only applies to the giant insects and other related arthropods in the Carboniferous, which I have hinted at probably an annoying amount of times at this point. And yes, sea scorpions were arthropods, but they were not terrestrial arthropods during the Carboniferous.
Right.
Not there yet. We'll get to that in the next episode. So, Jacolopterus and other sea scorpion size is still a bit of a mystery. It's thought that Jacolopterus lived in fresh water rather than the ocean. So more of a lake scorpion than a sea scorpion, if you will.
That's terrifying.
Which honestly kind of makes it more heinous. I don't know. In my opinion,
it does.
that's worse. Lake animals freak me out way more than ocean animals. Like the fucking giant catfish dude. Holy shit. Lake horror movies are much more scarier than ocean horror movies, and I am willing to die on that hill.
I agree with that, actually.
I don't like the murky water. It freaks me out. Okay, so Jacolopterus probably felt like the end of the strange specimens. Kind of wrapping up the video. But if you look at the time lapse, that is definitely not the case. We are nowhere near the end, actually.
Good, because I wasn't ready.
They are going to get even bigger. And speaking of creepy, large freshwater fish, all of the rest of the animals on this lineup are fish. Yeah, the fish are finally starting to take over.
Finally!
And salt water. So let me introduce you to the next strange specimen on our lineup.
I'm ready.
Hyneria. A giant freshwater fish that got
Give me
to
a number.
nearly 10 feet long. Like some of the more primitive species in the vertebrate transitional land, Hyneria had extremely powerful fins, which has led to some ideas that they were somehow able to haul their massive bodies on the land, but that's a big reach. They most likely use them to navigate the shallow and murky waters of their habitat. I personally don't like the idea of a large fish, 10-foot large fish, navigating shallow and murky waters.
Right.
If you're more comfortable with the ocean creatures, you are gonna love the rest of this lineup. First, Titanichthys. They exceeded 15 feet in length and potentially got to 30 feet long. They were found in shallow seas all over the world and were placoderms. Remember the group of armored fish. Luckily, like most giant ocean vertebrates today, it seems as though Titanichthys was more of a passive feeder. In 2020, scientists tested the resilience of their jaws using something called finite element analysis. Essentially applying virtual force to their jaws to see if they would break or bend. See how strong they are. Turns out they were weak as shit, which means they were much less likely to be active hunters, which need strong jaws to crush and smash their prey. Not Titanichthys. Their jaws would have cracked under the pressure. Their results were closer to those of basking sharks, which just split their mouths open and let small food particles make their way in. Little
Hopefully
things
I get
such as
food
little
today.
shrimps and planktons. They also had really
That's also how I go through my kitchen. Just walk through,
I'm dead.
Just waiting for something to fall in.
Hopefully. That's also how a lot of you guys somehow expect to get partners. Just float through life and hopefully you'll just bump into somebody someday. No effort put forth on your end.
I don't want to get too sidetracked.
You have to talk to people. You cannot just go from work to home, home to work.
I love these pre-crafted descriptions of why it's so hard and impossible to find somebody in this climate and what people want and all these just list of no's, you know? Yeah. And I'm like, but what you left out is, what if it works anyways?
Right.
And that's how you have to go about it.
Right.
Just do it like everything else in life. You have to participate for it to go well.
Yes.
Clock in.
small orbits, i.e. beady eyes, which aren't great for active hunting either. But not all big things from this time were so passive. And this last one on our list, the biggest guy, is an absolute terror. One of the most recognized animals from the Paleozoic, the poster child of the Devonian period. And so for this prehistoric celebrity, I decided to team up with someone who has completely brought him to life. Julian Johnson Mortimer, a world-renowned visual effects artist who has had his animations of the prehistoric world go viral on countless occasions. You might recognize his Leviathan animation or one of his many viral
outta here.
That's him.
And I found him by coming across some of his animations of the next guy on our list. I've been following his work for a while now, and dude, these animations send chills down your spine.
Yeah,
so
this
I was
is nuts.
stoked he was down to help me out with this part of the video. So, without further ado, allow me to introduce you to the dunk. Full name,
The dunk!
Dunkleosteus. One of the first vertebrate
Dunkleosteus!
super predators, and the largest predator of its time, with lengths of over 30 feet. Commonly cited in scientific papers. What made this fish a complete nightmare was its armored
Look at
head.
that.
Yes, another placoderm, but juiced the fuck up. They had extremely powerful, self-sharpening jawbones as teeth. This apex predator was able to take down anything it could get its fangs around.
Sick.
Based on biomechanics studies, they were able to open their jaw within a fraction of a second, creating a vacuum effect that sucked prey right into its mouth. I know these fossils look fake and ridiculous, but this is what you get fossilized from a fish that had armor in its head. And actually, nothing else. The rest of the body is a mystery. You've got this tank of a head and nothing else. At least for now. And this has captivated scientists since the dunk was first discovered.
Look how
in the
big he
1800s.
is.
Their massive size has been based on comparisons and calculations and math equations and what have you. So now, I have a confession to make. The newest and seemingly most precise estimates of how big they got make everything that I just said about their size a lie.
You really think someone would do that? Just go on the internet and tell lies?
Yes. I deceived you. Just a year ago, a paper was published with new estimates of the dunk's size, based on new and surprisingly, like scarily surprisingly accurate estimation methods. And they shrunk the dunk. Absolutely obliterated it. You might be thinking, Lindsay, why would you do this? Why would you lead me astray? I wanted to make sure that regardless of how much you knew or didn't know about the Devonian and Dunkleosteus before this video, even if you had never heard of the dunk, nothing at all, you would be able to feel the crushing weight of this disappointment from this paper, at least to some extent. How does it feel? I bet it feels like shit, doesn't it?
Yeah, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why did you do that?
My first thought was like, look what they did to my boy.
I'm just sad now. I had energy. I was hype up, 30-foot fish.
But also I was confused because we watched that one documentary on Netflix with all the new like CGI and stuff, and they had Dunkleosteus as real small. So I was like, oh well, somebody had already said that documentary, again, it's a CGI generated thing, was like not super accurate, and I was like, damn, another one they got wrong.
Well, I just assumed it was a different fish. I thought maybe it's just this is an earlier version of the smaller one is what I thought.
It's hard to forget the name Dunkleosteus.
Right.
Because it's such a stupid name.
Yeah.
I bet it feels like shit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All right, let's do a rundown of the paper. Which, if you're like me, you're probably going into it like, how compelling can a single paper be to disrupt a previous scientific understanding so drastically? Pretty fucking compelling, as you will see. It was published by PhD student Russell Engelman from Case Western Reserve University. He argued that the traditional methods of estimating the dunk's body size were shit, because they were mostly based off the body size ratios of the dunk's much smaller relatives, like Coxosteus. Who has more well-preserved remains. And yes, quite a funny little name. But get this, there's also a Dickosteus that looks like this. Coxosteus was like 15 inches long. Max. Much smaller than Dunkleosteus. So Russell was like, it's insane to take the ratios of small little guys and just scale them up and assume that's the big guy. There's no...
Right. Is that what they were doing? This is what I'm talking about. The details matter.
Right.
You say one sentence, he's got a relative, so we think they're similar. Great sentence.
Sure.
But I didn't do anything but scale the size. And you should go, what? Like, there's got to be another thing.
Yeah.
Because, like, me and my cousin are related. Our scales are very different.
No reason to assume it works that way, or is accurate at all. Okay, so he identified the problem, but what about the solution? Well, Russell ended up coming up with a body size estimate equation method that seems to not only work really well for Dunkleosteus and its relatives, but also for most, if not all, other fish, which is insane. It's called the orbit opercular length, or OOL.
Yeah, it is.
I'm going to call it the OOL. It's the length from the front of the eye socket, or orbit, to the back of the head. He showed, by applying this measuring tool to literally thousands of fish, that the OOL can really accurately predict the length of the rest of the fish. It shows
That's
that
really
short,
cool.
stout fishes tend to have short, stout heads, and long, slender fish tend to have long, slender heads. And luckily for us, the dunk's tank of a head can be accurately measured to determine the OOL, and the OOL is much shorter than you would expect based on reconstructions. And using the OOL, Russell estimated the dunk's actual body length to be somewhere between 10 to 12 feet long. And so likely shaped like a modern day tuna. Double slap! A catastrophe of disrespect to the highest order, all written out in mathematical models. And guess what else? This applied to Titanic these too. A punch to the stomach, and probably Hyneria, because why the fuck not?
I'm tired, boss.
Russell Engelman dumped a jar of marbles onto the floor of the prehistoric fish department and a vat of oil as well. As disappointing as it is to hear that Dunkleosteus is now Dunkleosteus, Russell's new model is a huge deal. Being able to accurately predict the sizes of literally almost every fish is going to be huge for paleontology. It's a big deal for fishes everywhere. So I'm excited to see who else gets wrecked with this model in the future. There's another wreckage I have to tell you about that happened in the Devonian, and that is the end of it. The late Devonian extinction. The second of the big 5 mass extinctions in the history of animals that we know of. It lasted for about 25 million years and wiped out 70% of all species on the planet, mostly affecting marine life through different periods of global cooling and anoxia and etc., or reduced oxygen in the oceans. Marine life was getting slapped around like a ping pong ball, and many species couldn't keep up. Fossil evidence suggests there were up to 10 distinct extinction events that each had a unique impact on different ecosystems, and each had different causes. Just bad luck after bad luck after bad luck. One of the periods of reduced oxygen could have been due to volcanic activity, which also could have led to a global cooling. There was also an asteroid that seems to have pummeled into Earth at some point during this time as well. A nearby supernova is thought to have flashed UV radiation into a hole in the ozone layer based on evidence of some weirdly formed plant spores that seem to have DNA damage. There's also some scientists putting the blame on plants again. Their new developments and land takeover led to some atmospheric changes. Long story short is, the last 25 million years of the Devonian was a clusterfuck. But luckily, some species made it out alive and evolved into some more familiar forms during the next period, like amphibians and sharks, and some weird as fuck specimens that are going to blow your mind. So stay tuned for that in the Carboniferous episode.
So many cool facts. What's the Steven guy's name? The Steven Osprus? The Steven fish.
Who are you? What Steven?
What up?
I don't have a Steven.
Come on.
I have Jake. Jakeolopterus?
Nope.
Hyneria?
Nope.
Titanichthys?
Nope.
Dunkleosteus?
Other page.
Archaeopteryx?
Look for an S. What are you doing?
Shinderhans!
Shinderhans.
I was just reading.
My boy Shinderhans.
I like it. I like that.
That's my favorite one.
We should name our baby Shinderhans.
I'll give it a nickname. Little Shin.
Little Shin is crazy. And Go Hard is a rap name.
This was a really interesting episode because the other episodes had a lot more going on, but the organization in this one was so much better. Yeah. And there was so much more development to follow. It made it really fun, and of course a little bit of tearing our heart out at the end.
Just a tiny bit.
A little bit of drama.
Just a little bit. I do love though that he was not afraid to be like, y'all are wrong. Yeah. He was like, Galileo. I think they murdered him though. Yeah. So keep an eye out.
He was a lot nicer than Galileo. He used math.
But anyway, Galileo, and I mean, you see how Boeing be moving. I don't trust big science either. So, I really enjoyed this. I was so excited to get back into it. I'm really excited for the next episode. You will not have to wait as long for the next episode as you guys did for this one. Husband, thank you so much for being on this journey with me. Because I was homeschooled, I know it's like my constant refrain though. It's always like all of this is new. Every single part of this is new to me. But do you
feel like you're like in a good flow now?
Yes. No, it's like at first it was like so hard to keep up. And now I'm just like, oh, okay, I get it. And because of this and this, and like the links are just like, it's there, it's clicking. And part of why, activation. Yes. And like part of why I got into history when I was in college, right, was because I was like, but how did this develop? But how did this develop? Well, but how did, and you have to go back to like the beginning of history and then do a whole timeline, right? He just stole my pen. Right. But that's what Lindsay's doing, but like for animals, and it's really enjoyable. The nerd in my heart is like singing an opera.
Starting a timeline for history is a dangerous thing to do. Yeah. It's a very big undertaking. I broke it. And that's what I was trying to avoid. It's I was trying so hard to avoid the fiddling.
It snapped so quickly.
It's fine. I was like, let me help her out. But it's a very bold undertaking, and she's doing a good job now as it progresses. The organization is so much easier to follow in this video, and it's only going to get better as she does more of it, which is great. Yeah. But I don't even know if she knows she knows how big the series is, but I don't think she knows how significant this is as somebody that's always been in school. Yeah. There's been no one in my life that's been able to handle condensing all of the information.
Right. Like, Like a detailed breakdown, but condensed.
Yeah, selecting important information and updating your knowledge. People that are good at condensing are not necessarily flexible.
Right.
And they find their own favorite parts and they stick to it. And even here, she's able to present something she loves and says, and this is how it's changed and advanced.
Yeah.
And that's a very new age way to look at that education. And that's what's really dope for me.
I think it's an incredible skill set. I think Lindsay's great. Like, she's my favorite.
I think Lindsay's great. Uh-huh.
You imitate her so well.
Aww.
Good job.
Do I? Or do you just like her a lot? You just like it resembles her.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. Don't forget to leave your reaction requests and recommendations in the comments below. And other than that, peace out, Ho Biscuits. It's Skittin' Lit.